Hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet very strategic and significant choices that all of us can make to become the best version of ourselves. Today, I am joined again with a podcast common personality, Russell Catania. And we often, when we have our podcast conversations, are talking about the topic of communication. In fact, we've already posted one of our episodes, Russell, on quit your complaining. And then you reminded me today that we are going to have another conversation about dysfunctional communication. And those 3 words, important 3 words, if I may say, even before you say them, a plague within our culture. I am so glad we're having this conversation today. Those 3 words are...
Pleasure is mine, DMB. Our 3 words today are kiss, gossip, goodbye. And really, I agree with you. It's a powerful statement. It is a difficult statement to wrap your head around. But really, when we boil it down to gossip is really just to lay aside unity and to really, it's just one of those common communication pitfalls that we continue to fall into. And we talked about one of those recently, right? Complaining. But gossip is definitely one of them. One of those ways that we just fall apart from the unity that we have with others, and it divides us, and it's just one of those pitfalls.
I often say that we need to learn to speak as though our moral reputation is at stake.
I absolutely love that.
Because we underestimate the power of our words. But there is nothing else that is more powerful, that shapes our character, that shapes others' reputation, our reputation in others' eyes, and reveals more about our character and our inner world than anything else. The words that we speak. And I think this topic of gossip, and the reason are having this conversation about kissing gossip goodbye is, I mentioned it, it's a plague. It is so natural in our interactions with others. You talked about the incredible disunity that it would create, that it really disrupts unity. And I think in many ways, this is a very, very important conversation. And I don't know if you've ever been gossiped about, but I have, and it's incredibly, incredibly painful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll even say, not only that I have been gossiped about, I have gossiped, right? And I definitely think that a lot of people do resonate with the idea of not only feeling gossiped about and feeling the hurt, but also feeling the sense of dysfunctional union with others by taking out your hurt and gossiping about someone else. And I know we'll talk about some of the reasons why we do that. And I'm really looking forward to getting to that part of our conversation.
Well, and again, I think that's really what we're here to do with the 3 Words podcast, is not just expose problems and give best practices, but actually dive deep as to why do we gossip? Because I think all of us would say, I hope someone's not gossiping about me right now.
Right.
And yet we have no problem, or at least we're inclined to not resist the temptation to gossip about others. And I've been thinking in preparation for this particular podcast, why do we gossip? And again, I think a lot about a variety of dysfunctional communication flaws, obviously grumbling and complaining and sarcasm and exaggeration. I was even thinking today about lying, why we lie to one another and so forth. But specifically with gossip, and there might be some root issues that apply to a lot of those other flaws as well, but I think particularly with gossip, there are really 3 kind of root causes or reasons for why we gossip. The first is we crave community. We really crave this deep connection to other people, and we don't always know how to achieve it, and so we do it in a dysfunctional way. So if I gossip, if I bring kind of this tasty morsel of interesting news about some other human being, whether I know them or not, to someone and say, did you know that? Or did you hear about? Or did you see this or that? It tends to create this sense of community around this information in this conversation. It's not healthy community, it's dysfunctional community, but it does create a little bit of a bond that in the short run feels kind of good.
Right.
I think secondly, there's this idea of comparison. I don't think we typically gossip about people we know who we are not jealous of. And so I think that if you think about that and reflect upon your own life, if you're gossiping about someone, there's probably something that you respect about them or like about them. But at the root, if I'm feeling insecure and I'm not sure I like myself and I'm not feeling good in my own skin, well, then to take someone else's life or to point out someone else's flaw or to embellish someone else's mistake in the presence of others, I'm feeling, at least again, short term, a little less insecure, but I'm comparing myself to them. So community, I crave. Comparison is something that I'm doing. But then finally, and let's just be honest, I've been there, cowardice. I don't want to resolve conflict. I'm frustrated with an individual. So instead of going to that individual and having that conversation with that individual, instead, I'll just pull a friend in and say, did you hear? Can you believe they did this to me? And I'm actually playing out my frustration in a way that will produce zero positive results, because there's no way that other person that maybe has hurt my feelings or has frustrated me, there is no way that my conversation over here that I'm calling gossip is going to be improved because of that conversation. I need to go to that person. So I think it's that craving for community, that commitment we make to comparison. A lot of this is subconscious, but then also cowardice. Let's just call gossip what it is. Gossip is a cowardice way of dealing with conflict in relationships.
And it's very easy to see how quickly that gossip turns into grudges and that gossip turns into really, I mean, a dysfunctional and unhealthy way to approach the insecurities that you have, right? We don't want to look inward, but it's pretty easy to look outward and say, look at those, and maybe those aren't even things you're struggling with about the people you're gossiping with. So look at this struggle that this person is having, but I don't have that kind of struggle.
Yeah.
But you do have a struggle, and it might not be the same one, right? I mean, I'm in medical school. There's a ton of people smarter than me. So what is my temptation when I see a bunch of people who do not need to study, like the hours that I put in? My temptation is to not, wow, what a brilliant classmate.
Yeah.
Right. I need to probably pick it up if I want to be at that level. It's look at this insecurity that I don't struggle with, but they do.
And I want to be a VIP, not a VDP. I want to be someone who's very inspirational, a very inspirational person, a very invigorating person, a VIP, a very inquisitive person. But oftentimes, you know who gossips? It's the VDPs. And so I have to put myself in that same category if indeed I'm gossiping. A very draining person, a divisive person, a difficult person, a dysfunctional person. That is who is often gossiping. But what's interesting is gossip begins to backfire. It always does. Because what happens is the person who is engaged in persistent gossip about a variety of people, what happens over time is we begin to realize, wait, when this person's not in the room, they're gossiping about that person. When this person's not in that space, they're gossiping about this person. What do they say about me when I'm not in the room?
Absolutely.
So in many ways, gossiping, while we're trying to build community and build a connection to other human beings, is actually breeding mistrust. Because eventually, we're all going to say, they talk about everyone. This person, he or she, talks about everyone at some point. And again, it just begins to backfire. That's why for me, and again, I've had to learn this lesson the hard way, because gossip is so easy. I mean, we say it all the time, right? We say, now, I don't want to gossip, but, and then we begin to fill in the blank. Or I don't mean to complain or whine, however, and we just begin. I think even saying that, we know we're doing it. But then by acknowledging it and going there anyways, it's kind of like we just kind of wink at it and say it's not that huge of a deal. But even you've built the case, and I think we've made the case even today, that it is incredibly destructive to our self-image, to who we're becoming as human beings, as well as all of our relationships. So I think for me, learning that lesson the hard way, because it is easy to be drawn into gossip, I've kind of set this rule where I actually, if someone comes to me with something about someone else, I have tried to, I don't do this perfectly, but oftentimes say, can we pause for a second? Have you had the opportunity to share this frustration or to share this situation or to share your perspective on this particular choice with that individual?
I love that.
And then oftentimes it's a very awkward moment because it's like, and typically it creates a little bit of defensiveness.
Right.
But over time, I'm hoping people will trust me because they'll know Michael Brown is not going to engage in gossip. He is not going to engage in those kind of back room conversations, that he's going to call it out. Now, what is really cool is if as a community, say as a friendship group, or even as a family, what if we all made that commitment together to say, hey, let's commit together to being a gossip-free zone. And that because we're committed to that together, We're all in this together. We're going to struggle, that we're not going to get defensive, but we're actually inviting each other that when that happens, that we're going to call the other person out gently and kindly, of course, but to say, remember our commitment. Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing that with me.
Right.
But to be able to actually slowly kind of tear away this horrible disease and to kind of begin to kind of move above it and beyond it and say, what does it look like to have just fantastic conversations with one another? And I know there's going to be those who listen who are going to just kind of honestly roll their eyes, because let's be honest, we wouldn't gossip if gossip wasn't enjoyable. And we wouldn't gossip if gossip wasn't at some level fun. And so in the same way that oftentimes when we kind of promote these big and bold ideas of how to live and who to become, the thought is, well, I can never do that. Well, it's okay if you choose not to do that, but absolutely we can do that. And I think, to be perfectly honest, everybody who's gossiping is sure hoping at that given moment, someone's not gossiping about them, which I think exposes really our heart's desire that we want people to believe the best in us. We want people to speak kindly and positively of us and not look for the quick opportunity to be able to tear me down.
Absolutely. I think it's a great opportunity and a great challenge that you shared to invite that accountability into your friend groups and your families, into your classrooms. And then eventually that accountability will be imposed among the people that care about you. You won't have to ask every time. And I really think that we can all start to really imagine a world where we are able to just make the quick effort to say no to those conversations that start leading down that direction, and really just encourage people away from letting the sun set on that anger that they have towards someone, and really just, preventing grudges from forming. And I think it's a great and positive effort and change that we can definitely make, and a quick one, I really think, with work and practice.
And I think you and I could both commit even to each other as friends that if we ever hear either of us speaking about such individuals in a negative way, or in a way that isn't productive, that we would call each other out, right, Russell? To be able to do that. Yeah. And so let's just remind our viewers, and obviously we're preaching to ourselves, let's commit to kiss gossip goodbye. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.